All right, Ryan, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Always, man. I love our talks, whether they're on air or not. Always.
Awesome. Well, first off, congrats on your 500th episode interview of the Learning Leader Show, man. When I think back, I mean, I don't know if I've done anything 500 times in a row in my life consistently. So doing this is, for me, knowing a little bit of the level of work that it takes to get one episode up, prep, production, everything. Huge congratulations to you. I'm so proud of you as well for being able to accomplish this feat.
Oh man, thank you. It means a lot. I mean, it's the most enjoyable thing that I get to do. As far as professionally, the most fulfilling work that I've ever done, and it's something that I would do for free. So it's nice when you can mix the thing you love doing most with your work life to provide for your family. So I will never take that aspect of it for granted, and try to continually get better and better at it so that it stays as the primary source of taking care of my family.
That's amazing. I heard this saying recently that all research is me search, like all the people that you're talking to, you're asking questions to, some of it must be reflective to yourself. When you hear that, like all research is me search, what do you think of?
Well, I seem to get the most feedback from people who listen to my show when they can tell I'm following my genuine curiosity and asking questions for myself. And sometimes I'll even say this is a selfish question, or this is for me. Now, I would hope that even though this one is for me, it still is interesting, and the listener, and I think of that as a singular person, not a group of people, because every person, you don't listen to podcasts in groups, you listen by yourself. Sometimes you may listen in the car with one of your kids or two in the car, but that's pretty much it. For the most part, podcasting is an intimate one-on-one type of interaction, and I'm not feeling what it's like from the person listening in their car or on their walk or in the gym, whatever, washing dishes. So I'm thinking about them a bit, but I'm most thinking about what I'm most curious about. And if I continue to follow my curiosity with great rigor, it seems that people like that. And that's great, because that's what I would want to do anyway. I say to my guests before we start recording, I want this to feel like two people going out to lunch. One of the two people will probably ask all or most of the questions, and that's how I'm going to approach this. So I'm going to call you by your name. You can call me by my name. Hopefully, by the end of it, you're happy with the level of preparation and how deep of a listener I was. I will try my best to be good at that. I'll try my best to ask you great initial questions and even better follow-up questions. And if we do that well, it'll shine a bright light on you and your work, and people will probably want to follow, maybe buy your books or do whatever. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And that's exactly what I try to do once we start recording. So I'm going to set the container for which we're going to hang out in with my guest, and it seems to, I think, set the right tone for how we approach it.
I love that. I imagine you get people asking you questions during the talk because they know you've interviewed so many people as well.
Yeah, it depends on depends on the guest, and I, just like how you and I have always been, um I enjoy it when it's more conversational and less, okay, this person is just the question asker, and the other person is just the answer, and
Yeah.
and that to me makes it more interesting, and we get to that spot a lot. Not every time, but we get there quite a bit, and I think that makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, admired, kind of learned from is that you've done a really good job of oftentimes, and I don't think this is calculated when I say this, but like you've earned the right to ask certain questions. When you
What do you
talk
mean?
to when you talk to General Stanley McChrystal, the first interview that you did with him, You asked him a question I would probably, I'd probably be too scared to ask. And you probably know what I'm talking about. Do you remember?
When he got fired?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, how do you ask that? Like, I'm sure you were gracious in your invitation to interview the guy, and he said yes. He probably didn't think he was coming on to explain what happened when Obama called him, and he's like flying back on, some plane or whatever, the Air Force One, whatever it was. I just remember I was washing dishes and I had to like literally pause, like stop the faucet. I was like, wait, did he just ask what I think he asked? Then I thought about it, trying to put myself in your shoes. I'm like, man, this has been a good interview. He really earned this question.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a good observation. I asked that because I was genuinely most curious about it. I mean, I had written notes about it. I'd read about that meeting. I'd read they still had mutual respect for each other. So I had knowledge base that they didn't hate each other. They had a disagreement, and he got fired. And I was hoping that he would share what it was like. I mean, I don't know many people who've gotten fired by the president. And I think so naturally I'm curious, and I do think you can earn some of that through your prep. If you've proven to the person that you've really prepared and worked hard, I think you can earn the right in a way to ask pretty much anything. They don't have to answer. I tell them all they have final cut. They have final say. So I'm not a journalist. I'm a conversationalist. So if I ask them something that they don't want to talk about, and this doesn't happen very much though, but if I do, or they say something that they regret, they have final cut. I can't even remember the last time it's happened, but it has a few times. But I try again to set the tone and the stage ahead of time to say, if you do that, no worries. This is not a gotcha thing. This is me just trying to have a conversation with you and learn. And I will follow my curiosity, and my best questions will be the follow-ups. So part of what makes it so fun is you can't predict that. You don't know what your follow-ups are going to be because I don't know what their initial answer is going to be. That's where the real skill comes in. And I love trying to build that skill and get better and better. And it's hard. I don't do it great all the time, but when it goes well, it turns out to be a really cool conversation that I think is both entertaining and informative, and people seem to like it, and I like it. And that's this, you talk about 500 episodes ago, mate. That's what this is all about. This is me building my own leadership PhD program. So initially it was just for me anyway. And if others wanted to learn along with me, maybe we could build a community out of it. But that was kind of secondary to the initial part, which was me just trying to learn from people far wiser than me.
Do you remember how you came up with the name?
Yeah. So my favorite bosses, coaches, teachers, mentors in my life were the ones who I noticed would have little note cards and would always be writing notes to themselves. Coach Allery, my high school offensive coordinator, who I love, was one of those guys. Brian Miller, one of my favorite bosses, even though he was the boss of my boss, was always reading books and telling stories, and regularly told me about the new things he was learning that then made him better. They were learning leaders. They're leaders who never thought they had it all figured out. And so my favorite leaders, my favorite mentors, my favorite coaches were the ones who are constantly working on themselves to get better. Because I also, Omid, just like I'm sure you have, I had some bosses that they knew it all. They didn't need to read books. They didn't need to listen to a podcast. They didn't need to go to a leadership conference. They didn't need to do any of that because they already knew it all. They were the opposite of a learning leader. I don't think I hate anybody, but I strongly dislike those types and don't want to work with them. I have to think they could find some level of curiosity about something and try to learn about that. I got to believe that's there, but I have had a few that were not like that. So yeah, the learning leader came out of the fact that those are my favorite leaders, and that's the type of leader that I aspire to be. And I'm still working at that. I'm still trying to be like those people. And so why not go to some of the most thoughtful, most accomplished leaders in the world and ask them questions directly. And that's what I've been doing now for almost 8 years and 500 episodes.
Wow. What's the contrast between Ryan from 8 years ago to you today? When you think about, those 500 interviews and all the time spent, how has that time period and those interviews impacted your growth as a leader?
There's probably a full book worth of stuff there. I appreciate the question. I think you can. The cool thing is you can actually listen. You can hear what I sounded like all those years ago, early on. I think what you'd find now is probably a more thoughtful person, a more reasonable person, a more open-minded person, more confident person, a better interviewer. I think if I listen to myself then versus now, I'm certainly wiser too. I've learned a lot from these amazing people. So I've gotten to put all of that into play in my everyday life. My whole business now is based upon, pretty much everybody that hires me for anything, speeches or leadership circles or consulting with their business, they've been listening to the podcast for years. A guy, I just booked a keynote in Vegas for next year this morning. He emailed me yesterday, and full fee gig. And he's like, I've been listening for 3 years, man. I feel like I know everything about you. And now I want you to be the kind of the headliner keynote for my event in Vegas in February. And that, so there's the cool thing about that is a guy like that has heard and seen that growth as well. And it's not like he asked me right away. He's been listening for 3 years. So it took him a while to be like, okay, yeah, I think it's time. So people like that have obviously noticed and seen things as well. And that's a gratifying feeling, I'd say.
That's amazing. Those stories, just to hear, I remember you telling me one time, just share an episode with somebody and see what sticks with them. And I think this episode is all about your show. And so you're going to be making tons of recommendations in a few minutes, which I can't wait to get to. I did want to ask you though, over these 500 interviews, it's hard to pinpoint, but how do you think that's made you a better father? What have you learned that's maybe sort of improved that area of your life?
So I've interviewed old guys, grandpas, and I think about them a lot. And more than a couple of them had said to be more patient, which is way easier said than done, but also to be more of a cheerleader and less of a disciplinarian. And in my nature, I think, given my upbringing and background of coaches I've played for, I lean more towards being heavy on discipline. And I would say, if anything, I've probably relaxed a little bit, and have, not that we don't have high standards and we don't expect our girls to do the right thing, but I've tried to be more of, I don't know if cheerleader is the right word, but certainly a supporter in their corner, and less of just hardcore get uptight about every little thing that happens around the house. And I think if you ask Miranda, that she'd say over the past couple of years, I've probably improved with that. Our girls would definitely say that too. So I think from when I talk to these old guys who have grandkids that are now older than my kids, and I'm like, what did you learn? What did you do? What did you mess up? I really try to listen to them and take what they say. And so I'm like, what do you regret? And sometimes we have these conversations off air, and because that's the most important thing, as you know, that's the most important thing in our lives is our partners and our kids. And so if I can get that type of advice, then that's huge. You haven't heard it yet, but 500 comes out here in a couple of days. And one of the questions I asked my dad was on how to have the different stages of marriage. So you go from initially the early days, without kids, and then you go through the whole big long chapter with kids, and then they go away to college. But in their case, they were still really tight to us because they came to our games. So we didn't live with them, but they were still with us a lot. But then after that, and we're done playing, what do you do? And so he told this great story about their wedding rings and their CCC, and that's these words they wrote for themselves, and how they're navigating the path of having a great marriage that's getting even better post all of that. And I thought like, wow, this is really good, man. Like this is really helpful. So I think all of that goes into it, is trying to learn from people who have just been there before me that I really admire and look up to.
Can you tell me more about episode 500? Like how'd you get that set up? I saw The
When's this
Usual
coming out?
Suspects. This will come out Monday.
Okay. So, well, every 100th episode I record with my dad and my brother, my younger brother, AJ. And so
Why do you
it
do
started, it started just for fun on number 200. I didn't do it the 100. 100, I did more of a review of what I've learned. 200, and then we did it for 300, and then it was like, well, is this a tradition? So we did it for 400, and now it is kind of a tradition of this is what we're going to do. It's a good way to kind of check in and see where each other's at, see what's happened over the past 100 episodes between us, and now it's become fun. It's really conversational. My brother got his first real job post NFL life. My younger brother AJ played in the NFL for 11 years, and he never had like a job because he went straight to the NFL after college, and now he works for a guy named Pat McAfee. And Pat, in some circles, is everybody knows him. In other places, they don't, because he primarily lives on his daily show on YouTube, and also now works for ESPN College Game Day. But I had Pat surprise AJ and join. I had messaged with him and said, would you join and surprise him? I thought it would be kind of funny to see their response if he joined. He did. It was great. He absolutely killed it. And then I did some listener questions for my dad and my brother and me, and we went through that. We had a draft. We've been doing these drafts now just for fun, where we draft people for certain things, meaning who, and then we compete. We try to like have this weird competition about who had the best draft. And in this case, the draft was, it's your birthday. You can have 5 guests. None of your family or none of your close friends are there, so pick other people. So usually it'd be like famous, well-known people, and we did that. And it's usually a good opportunity for us to bust each other's balls and just kind of have fun with it and compete a little bit and tell jokes. And I try to set a stage so AJ can tell jokes. He wants to make people laugh. He loves telling jokes. So that helps create a space for him to do that too. We had fun with it. It was great.
That's awesome. So I watched the Pat McAfee show. I'm more of like I watched like the clips, like dependent on the topic.
Yep.
And people think your brother is hilarious if you read the comments. Like there's a like fan base that they love him, So it's fascinating
wild,
work that he's
in
doing.
Tahoe, where we go. We went with Pat. Pat came for the first time this year, and I would say this year he may have had more fans than any year. And we started going like before he even won a Super Bowl. And throughout the Super Bowl year and all that, when he was a Pro Bowler and all this stuff in the NFL, and to see that there may be more followers and fans now with his daily show with Pat is pretty wild. It's cool. But I had said my hope was that he would have a bigger second career than his first career, but that'd be hard to do, and I think he's on the way to his way to doing it.
Oh yeah, no, that's really cool. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, you could almost change the name to both of their shows if you wanted to, because I think.
I think part of the reason why it works though is AJ knows that his natural, the way he would naturally approach the show is perfect for a guy like Pat, because Pat always needs to be a one. He always has to be the man. And AJ doesn't need, he can be, but he doesn't need to be that. So he knows when to lay low. He doesn't speak up just for the sake of speaking up. He shares an opinion if he has one, but if he doesn't say anything. And I think people can appreciate that because they know when he does speak up, it's authentic, it's real. And if he doesn't have an opinion, he's like, I don't know, I don't care. And then they just kind of move on, or they make fun of each other and then they move on. So I think that's why that seems to work so well.
That's really cool. Well, I can't wait to check that out.
It's cool.
I was going to ask you as well, what is the most common question people ask you about your show?
Favorite guest is a big one. Who's a dream guest? So favorite guest, dream guest, which I get. I mean, I've asked other people who have shows that thing too.
And you're not going to tell me, are you? What the?
No, I mean, I'm fine to I'm fine to go through that if you want. I mean, it changes by the day. All those things do, but Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's a. I think people probably ask that too because maybe they're not sure what to ask, or if it's not, if like we're not going to go and have like a conversation of depth, then that's an easier one, and they're fun. Like I understand it. I think it makes sense if you don't have time to like go get in depth and that's that. But yeah, I think those are probably the questions I get asked the most.
Okay. So I definitely want to hear what your favorite one was. If you have one off the top of your head, what is it?
One. Um,
So the way I've set this up is actually to ask you a series of questions to solicit episodes from you. So I knew if I just asked you for your top 10, you're not going to give them to me. So I have a series of questions that we can go through. And then I think as I read them, you're going to be like, oh, okay, if you're coming from this walk of life, these are the episodes I'd give you. So we can do either or, whichever one you prefer.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it's hard to pick one. I think, as you know, I would. I mean, probably 216. I mean, it's Jim Collins. It's
Yeah.
tough. I've said that before, but Jim's 216. It's probably not the best one, but it was years in the works. One of my literary heroes, Good to Great, was one of the first books I ever really read when it came to management and leadership. So again, depending on the day you ask me, I would say 216 is a pretty good place. I have comments about that one probably as much or more than any episode I've ever done. So
Wow.
that's probably it. But you know, I've told you before, I love Cat Cole. I love General McChrystal. I love Jay Hennessy, another Navy SEAL who taught me about pushing my edges. There's McRaven, you know, another military guy. So like the military guys, Chris Fussell, another SEAL, I hold them in a different regard than everybody else because I did not have the guts and the willingness to put my life in the line to serve our country. I played football. People call it war and battle. It's not. It's not war. You're not going to battle. Like, it's not. Yeah. Is it violent? Yes. Is it dangerous at times? Yes. But it's not. It's not serving our country. And so when I talk to them, it's just different. I just hold them in a different regard than any other person in the world because they've raised their hand to say, I'm going to serve my country in a way where I'm putting my life on the line. And I think they deserve way more than I could ever give. And so I put the McChrystals and the McRavens and the Chris Fussells and the Jay Hennessys in a different space just because of what they've done and how they've served.
Okay. No, that's great. What do you think has been the key elements of stringing together 500 episodes every week consistently over the last 8 years?
It never stops. There are no days off. Now, there's a lot of hustle porn out there. I get it, and people don't like that. But the thing is, this is what I love to do. So, no, I have not taken a day off, ever, since I've started. Every day I've done at least a little bit of work, and some days a lot. So that means like looking for guests, writing cold emails, doing research, reading, preparing, building relationships with all of the PR people in the publishing world, which I've kind of have with all of them now, with the big publishers, and they're sending me their list of clients for the next year, and then I'm just selecting the ones that I want to talk to. So there's always an element of the work that goes into the show. It just never ends. I just did a thing for Jason Gaynard's Mastermind Talks, a virtual community that he does in between his events. And he asked me it was all about just building a podcast. And I actually think it may have turned off some of the people in there because I said the reason that I'm able to do it is because it has been the main thing from day one and has stayed the main thing every single day since then. And I don't think I'm talented. This is not fake humility. I don't think I'm talented enough for it to be a secondary thing and still get better. So it has to stay the main thing, whether I'm writing a book or I'm on a 2-week tour giving speeches like the last 2 weeks, or I got multiple leadership circle meetings to prepare for. The podcast still comes first. It's before all of that stuff. And when I help other people start podcasts, the reasons why most of them die is because they're not willing to do that.
So,
And
I
that's
mean, dude, it's a lot of work. Like,
it's a ton, I mean, you're trying to balance a million different things. Like, that's why I think if you're doing it to get speaking gigs or you're doing it to try to get something else, I don't think that's enough to sustain it. If you're doing it because you actually love the act of getting the big time guest, sending the cold emails, scheduling, preparing, reading by yourself for hours, creating an outline, and then actively working on becoming a better interviewer, watching others, listening, what could be a good way to take this, and then just naturally getting the repetition so that you become better and better. All of that just takes so much time, and it's hard. I think you have to love all of that part. Like Peyton Manning was known for loving the craft of preparing to play on Sundays. He took every single rep in practice. He never let somebody else take reps. He took all of them. He loved watching film. He loved taking notes. He loved all of the preparation elements, and that's why he did what he did. I think that's part of this. And this may sound extreme. It may sound crazy, but you asked, and this is how I choose to approach it, and I think that's how it's happened the way it has.
yeah, no, I love that. It's funny. Like, I had the question in my notes of like, if someone asked you to start a podcast, what would you say? And I think it's almost like a separate conversation in itself. But you hit on it, man. It is.
I think
is a
you
lot of
should,
work.
but I also think you should know what it takes going in. And I've tried to help people when they want to start, and the simple fact is pretty much all of them have quit, and that means I'm a bad teacher. But I think it's more of a why are you doing this is always the first question. Why? So when they tell me, well, I'm a really good speaker and I want to get more gigs. Okay, well then, I think we should stop now, because that's not going to work. I think if you told me like I love having deep, long form conversations with people and trying my best to learn from them, and I want to get better at this skill because I think becoming a great communicator is so important. And this would be an awesome opportunity for me to talk to those types of people and ask them questions and learn from them. And if I publish them, maybe other people could learn too. If they said something like that, okay, let's go. Like, yeah. Let's go. That's the actual craft of doing the work versus I want to get something from this. And I think the motivation of I want to get something from this, I think that can work for a certain period of time. I don't know if that can sustain over 500 episodes. I doubt it. I guess some people could, but I don't know. I think that would be tough.
It reminds me, and I think I sent you that Jay Shetty quote from his book when he says like he went to the ashram and he was walking with these monks, with the senior monk, and the monk says, look at this guy. He's read all the scriptures, and, look at this guy. He can meditate for, 8 hours straight, all this stuff. And then Jay goes, man, I wish I can do that. And the guy basically turns to him and he says, like, do you wish, you can do that in terms of just the achievement, or do you wish you can learn that in terms of enjoying and falling in love with the journey? And it's just it's something I've thought about a lot lately. So I love how you kind of articulated that.
So true. It's so true, man. I think that's exactly what it is. Have you seen the Ronnie Coleman video? Did we talk about the Ronnie Coleman video?
No, like the bodybuilder?
Yes.
No.
He said, everybody want to be a bodybuilder. Not everybody want to lift these heavy weights. And so it's his voice is way better. It's hilarious. I'll send it to you. But he's like, yeah, everybody want to be a bodybuilder, right? But everybody want to lift these heavy ass weights, And it's just like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Like they want to get on stage and do the thing, but they don't want to lift all those weights,
That's a perfect analogy.
It's really good. And it's like, I don't think he realized how profound of a statement it was, because he was in the gym, like in between sets when he said it. And it's awesome. I'll send you the video. You can look it up. It's out there now, but it's exactly kind of in line with this, just said so succinct, and it's really profound.
That's funny. Okay, here's some scenarios for you. Okay. Someone comes to you and they say, hey, Ryan, I'm in a leadership position. I've got a 5-hour flight coming up. I've heard some great things about your show. What 5 episodes would you recommend that I download for my flight? Again, I'm kind of in a new leadership position, and why?
Of my show?
Yeah.
Dude, you should have told me. I would have pulled up the list. Cat Cole. Cat Cole's for sure.
Why Cat Cole? You don't have to go into super detail, but give me the whys behind these.
The most precise communicator I've ever talked to. And so her stories are both entertaining and extremely practical and useful. So I would choose the second time I had Kat on. I'm looking for the number right now. It was when I did it at Insight Global's corporate headquarters in Atlanta.
This is the live one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can find it. So Cat Cole would be one. I would, I think Todd Henry is amazing.
He's been on like 75 times. So which episode?
I would choose episode 489 with Todd. Although the one right before that, which the last time before that I had him on, I'm not sure which one, what number that is. But Todd, when we talked about Dying Empty, which is a clip that's, I get mentions about that section of my book, Die Empty, a lot. And that came directly from Todd. So I would say every time we talk, he's great. He's going to become a reoccurring guy on him. And I would probably pick up Brooke Cups. Brooke's become one of my best friends and mentors in life. Cat Cole's 476, by the way. Right. Brooke is high school basketball coach, leadership teacher. We're doing a gig tomorrow together, actually, for 3 hours, a workshop that we're doing here in Ohio, which is going to be pretty fun. So I think he would be great. So that's 3 people. I think you got to pick one of. I would go with McRaven, Admiral William McRaven, of the Make Your Bed fame. For those who've probably seen his commencement speech at University of Texas. McRaven oh man, I'm like getting chills almost thinking about it. When he described the night of the Bin Laden raid to me, and then all of the preparation before that night until they eventually got him, and I'm like, what did you do next, man? You celebrate with your guys? Like, what did you do? And he goes, I had 10 other missions, man. I was worried about the other missions going on. Wait, you had 10 other missions that you're in charge of the night of the Bin Laden raid? Yeah. All over the world. Okay, wow, this dude's another level. So that would be one. McRaven. Let's go with 500, man. You got to check out 500. It's pretty good.
I love it.
Okay. For it.
Okay, so this is that scenario.
What's that?
Okay, so that's a good one. I have other scenarios for you.
Okay.
Okay, somebody says to you, Brian, I want to be more consistent about being healthy, working out, taking care of myself. What's an episode I should listen to?
Dude, you should have told me that you're going to do this. They want to be more consistent?
Yeah, I want to be more consistent, being healthy, working out, and taking care of myself. What should I listen to?
Taking care of myself? Like health, food, and exercise?
Physically, yeah. And I think it's not just like going to the gym. And I think you can take it any way, right?
Yeah. So I've had the guest I've had on the most is Ryan Holiday. I would have Ryan Holiday in that list because he is consistent. He works out. I would have 2 guys, Ryan Holiday and James Clear. When you talk about consistency and habits, they're the 2 best. So I've had both of them on multiple times. I did a live show with James about a year before Atomic Habits came out and just took over the bestseller list for now 4 years and running.
The book has like 70 million reviews, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been on the New York Times since it came out. It came out 4 years ago, which is pretty awesome. So I'd say James Clear and Ryan Holiday would be, and again, you can choose 7 of the episodes of Ryan Holiday. They're all good. I think they've each gotten better, but you can hear our growth. I mean, because when we first recorded, Ryan Holiday was just, I think it was only Obstacle is the Way, maybe, and now he's got all of his books. He's a prolific producer of work, and then James is, I know, working on his second book now, but is like every answer of James is perfect. It's amazing how good that guy is.
That's awesome. Okay, here's the next one. Ryan, I don't manage people, but I want to be a better leader at work. What episode should I listen to?
I don't manage people, but I want to be a better leader at work. So leadership is not about a position. Leadership is not about a promotion. Leadership is not about a title. Leadership is a choice. And so we have to make that choice every day. And I think one of the people who taught me that, who is a leader in that regard, is Seth Godin. Seth and I have talked a lot about leadership being a choice, not a title. And I've had him on two or three or four times now. So I think Seth is probably really good at that, especially in like the creative space. And I love our talks about keynote speeches and the use of PowerPoint and visuals to reinforce the message, not to look at the screen and read what they say, because you don't use words, we use pictures. So I think Seth's probably one of the best ones. And if you do happen to want to get promoted, like communicating and giving presentations like Seth Godin is probably a good way to get promoted.
Ryan, I work a lot and I have a stressful job, but I also want to be a better dad. I want to do a better job of showing up as the best version of myself at home and at work. What episode should I listen to?
I'm thinking of my old guys.
Yeah.
Ken Blanchard's on there. Really good. I'm looking through some. I think Ken's the first one that comes to mind when it comes to Adam Bryant has interviewed a lot of people. Jeff Immel. No, I think it's Ken Blanchard here when it comes. John Chambers was really good about that. 406 actually, that just popped up. John Chambers was great, former CEO, grandpa now, and he's I would say I thought that was a really good episode. I thought he was a fantastic storyteller, and it seemed to impact a lot of people. So that's 406. I think John Chambers would be good.
Okay. On your website, can you just go to the first episode, or do you have to keep hitting next?
I don't think you
just
can.
go to one.
We got to get it set up. So what we're building right now, actually, somebody asked this question before, is we want to have one page that has every single episode with just a link, and you can just click it. So we're working on building that now. Apparently, it's you don't want to have it on a main page because it takes a long time to load. So we just create a separate page that if I give you a direct link, you can just click it and go to that.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I was wondering, like, kind of like, if you're on
I'd like to have that page
site,
right now.
just like first. Took me a while to get to number one, which we'll talk about in a second.
Well, you can do it, I think, in Apple Podcasts, right?
Probably, but I just wanted to kind of simmer.
No, I got you. Yeah. I mean, I wish, like I said, with you asking these questions, I wish I had that page right now. I could scroll through more easily than what I'm doing right now.
That's funny. Okay, Ryan. I want to develop. Oh, this is probably you've already answered, but I want to develop better habits and have more self-discipline. What episode should I listen to? It sounds like this is Ryan Holiday and James Clear.
I think so. I mean, they're right in that. I think that's their wheelhouse.
Okay, Ryan, I want to cultivate more happiness in my life. What episode should I listen to?
Probably Dr. Laurie Santos. She teaches the #1 rated class on college campuses at Yale on happiness. So that's 366. I think. Did
you have a takeaway from that interview?
One of the things. So I learned a lot leading up to that in my preparation. It's really about serving others and building relationships, which is kind of the gist of her class. It goes way deeper than obviously, but that's I would say was all the science-backed research was all about that.
Okay. Ryan, I want to have a better line of sight of seeing my blind spots so I can improve as a person. What episode should I listen to?
Self-awareness. So that would be Tasha Eurich.
I like the recall there. That was quick.
Yeah. I think Tasha is one of the more I mean, she has done so much research when it comes to self-awareness and understanding blind spots and understanding that everyone thinks they have a high level of self-awareness and yet basically nobody does. So that one is, I mean, it's top of mind to me because I always think about it because I think I'm pretty self-aware. Well, no, I'm probably not. So I need to work on this and constantly think about it and enlist the help of friends and make sure what am I screwing up and what am I missing? I'm kind of constantly asking people that, probably annoying them. But because I see these stats, I'm thinking, well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm self-aware, but I'm probably not.
Have you ever done a 360 review at work?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I do them for leaders now too. I facilitate those, and it's just interesting. Like when you get somebody who's not self-aware and you present them with this sometimes really critical feedback, to hear the excuses and explanations of, you're like, dude, no. Like, you're not getting this here. You're doing exactly the thing the person says you're doing that you shouldn't be doing right now. And it's funny, like the people who do have a high levels of self-awareness are always so hard on themselves. They're just constantly, it's amazing how it works. Like the ones who seem to get the best feedback are really, really hard on themselves. And the ones who are making excuses or saying, oh no, you don't understand, they're the ones who need that the most, but it just goes in this vicious cycle because they don't want to listen. So it's, after facilitating a number of those, I've learned a lot.
Wow. Okay. That's super fascinating. Do you know how to spell Tasha's last name? Is it like U-E-R?
E-U-R-I-C-H. I'll look it up.
Okay,
what our number was, but it was I wrote about it in, God, which book? Might have been my first one.
Okay.
It's
I'll
episode
definitely look it
204. It's 204.
Okay. Ryan, I want to make sure I'm living a good and meaningful life. What episode should I listen to? First thing that came to my mind was like Die with Zero, like stuff like that. But I don't know if you have others that come to mind.
So that's Bill Perkins. I got a text yesterday from one of my clients he'd just taken his daughter to a Dave Matthews Band concert. It was going to an Adele concert in Las Vegas this week. And he sent me a bunch of pictures with him and his daughter. And I was like, man, I love how intentional you are about, his daughter's in college, and I love how intentional you are about doing these cool things, like, because they both love music. And he said, bro, I never did this until the Bill Perkins podcast. And since then, with both my son, in his case, his son and his daughter, he does a lot of one-on-one things. He said, I want to die with zero. And so he goes, he doesn't really spare, he's doing well, I mean, but he doesn't want to spare expenses when it comes to what he's doing with his kids, especially with these like one-on-one dad-daughter, dad-son trips that he does. And I love that. I think that's so cool that he's doing that. But he said, I didn't do any of this until I listened to that one episode. I'm like, that's crazy, man. That's like real impact that episode is going to have. Its name's Mike, on Mike's life and his kids' life moving forward. And to me, those are also kind of goosebump inducing type moments, because he didn't do that and now he does it all the time. And that's wild. Even if he's the only guy, like, that's a win, man. That's a huge win to see stuff like that happen to a guy who has accomplished a ton in his career, still running a sizable business. And now he's much more intentional about creating moments with his kids, especially. I think that's really cool.
That's amazing. Wow. I feel like I should re-listen to that one. It was so good.
It's good.
All right. There's a podcast contest, and to get in, all you have to do, Ryan, is submit one episode. And Guy Raz is the judge, by the way. And there's no specific requirements, so it could be on anything. It just has to be compelling. Okay. Again, you can only submit one interview. Which one would it be and why?
The only you're saying it just needs to be compelling.
Yes.
Dude, this one's really hard. I'm trying to think of the ones I've gotten most feedback from. That's why Jim Collins comes to mind.
Would you remember a question I asked you as maybe in the last interview we did? I said, which one changed you the most? I don't know
What'd I
if you
say?
remember your response.
What'd I say?
You talked about your conversation with Maurice Claret and like
Yep.
being less judgmental. I thought
Yep.
that was amazing.
So to reiterate that point, the Maurice Claret story, that was super early. I mean, I'm sure I was terrible on the episode. It's like number 3 or 4 of 500. But when I talked about the difference, how I'm different than I was then, I think I talked with Paulina Pompliano about this. I think the more conversations, like deep conversations you have with a wide variety of people, the more reasonable you become. You realize the world's gray. It is not black and white. You become less judgmental and more curious because you get to gain insight from others' life experiences that if you only live in your little bubble and just talk to a few people who live in that same bubble, and this happens a lot today especially, you don't get that experience from Maurice Claret, who didn't grow up with a dad, who didn't grow up in a situation with money, who needed to sell drugs in his case to get by, who made a lot of really poor decisions in his life. And before getting to know him, I was super judgmental of not only him, but people like him that made those choices, that blew their money or that sold drugs or that made bad choices. And then I thought about the fact that look at our upbringings and how different we were. He has no guidance and nobody there looking out for him. Whereas I grow up in one of the nicest setups you could have, with 2 parents who love you very much, with 2 brothers who love and support you, they'll provide you with anything you could need. They're giving you counsel and guidance all the time. They're helping you understand money and life and decision making and leaders, everything, man. And so I was almost taking it for granted at that point, versus not realizing, oh, dude, you were born sliding into home plate. Like, realize that privilege. And I think the more people you talk to, the more your mind is open to that. And now, to me, it's a huge motivation to not waste that gift. So I try hard to think about that on a daily basis when I'm maybe feeling sorry for myself or things get hard or I don't feel like doing work. Hey, man, realize kind of the good setup you got and do your best to make the most of it.
Man, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yep.
All right. You're at the Pat McAfee show. In the hallway, you bump into none other than Ben Roethlisberger. And just to set it up for someone never listening to our interviews before, he's somebody you duked it out with for the starting position in college. After over a year, he ended up winning the job. My assumption is you haven't talked to him since, but he's a big part of your story and he's in your books. So in the hallways at the Pat McAfee and AJ show, you bump into Big Ben and he agrees to come on your show. And he says, Ryan, I'd love to be a guest, but you can only ask me one question. What would it be?
So you have to set the context here. I have seen him since we were together in college. He used to go out to Lake Tahoe, where we go every summer, and play in the same golf tournament. So we've hung out there a little bit. This was years ago, though. So I haven't seen him in probably a decade. The thing to remember is Ben has beaten out a lot of quarterbacks along the way. I'm just one of the guys on that long list. I have never been beaten out for the starting quarterback job in my life, except for one time. And so to him, he's the one guy. But, I mean, to me, like, he is the one guy. But to him, I'm just another guy. So our relationship is viewed completely different. While it was contentious and weird when we were freshmen and sophomores at Miami, after he was established as being the guy, I was just another guy he beat out. So he doesn't think about me. He doesn't think about any of that. He just thinks about the fact that I was there in the quarterback room with him for 2 years. That's it. So the question, it'd be hard because like I'm not really good at the one great question. I think I'm good at the longer form conversations. So I would just be curious to talk about how he views leadership. I think what he's found, what he's learned over his time playing in the NFL about being a leader, what he's learned from his mistakes. I know these are multiple questions here, but I would formulate a question out of what he's learned as a leader. It'd be like a learning leader style question, hopefully to generate a really long answer, which then I would ask a follow-up and another one and try to squeeze out a few more. Much like I did with Mayor Eric Adams, where that was supposed to be a short one and it ended up still not being as long as my normal episodes, but longer than was supposed to be. And I think that was the approach I took there. So I would take the same approach to Ben.
I love it. Okay. All right. We mentioned Jim Collins. What would you say is one of the lessons from him that stood out to you?
The definition of leadership. Okay, look that up on Google. Look it up on anything. There's a billion definitions. What he told me that I use a lot, leadership is the art of getting people to want to do what must be done. Think about the simplicity of that, and then let's break down that sentence. Leadership is the art, so it's an art, of getting people, we got to get other people to follow, to want to do, not to do it, to want to do, and then the last part's super important, what must be done. That means you understand and have done the work and have a knowledge base of what needs to get done. And you have this artistic way of getting others to want to do what must be done. And I think that is how I view leadership. And it sounds far more simple than it actually is, but I think that's what great leaders do. They understand how to inspire and motivate and get people to want to do what must be done, not just to do it, but to want to do it. And the best leaders I've seen seem to figure out how to do that.
I love that, man. You guys, I have to go back to that one.
It was the second time we recorded. I did a long recording, and so we broke it into 2 episodes. But it was on that one when we broke it up into 2.
That's awesome. I also thought about the other lesson that you mentioned a few times. I think you mention it oftentimes in your show as like a trailer. And maybe you can refresh me on this. And he sort of paused you in your tracks, and he said, "It's not about your why, it's about your who." Is it something like that?
That's right. That your who, the people you choose to surround yourself with, will be the single greatest determining factor in your long-term success or failure. Your what's important, your why is important. All that stuff's important. But if you don't get your who right, you're really going to struggle. So who will be your friends? Who will be your spouse? Who will be those that you help? Who will be your mentors? Who are you going to spend the most time with? That you become those people. And so I think that's critical to get that part right. And after that conversation, I really broke it down into 3 buckets of people, of my who, and that's who's ahead of me. So these are people who have done what I want to do, and most importantly, have done it in a way in which I admire. So who's ahead of me? So I think of like Pat Lencioni and Ken Blanchard and Jim Collins and John Maxwell and Kat Cole and some of these people. Who's beside me? That's the second bucket. These are people on a similar path. Like I view you as one of these guys, right? We're on similar paths. We can talk and text and call each other and say, hey, man, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? We're not going to judge each other when we mess up, and we're going to be rooting for each other when things go well. Like that's really important with this beside bucket, right? You got to have those people. And then behind is the third bucket. Who are you helping? Who are you pouring into? 1, because it's the right thing to pay it forward and help other people. And 2, when you're put in the position of being a teacher, so much learning happens. I think we need to regularly be teaching. This is partially why I started really focusing on the keynote speaking element of my business, because it not only can it be lucrative, but it also can be, they can be great moments to stress test my ideas, to see if my stories work and resonate, and to see if they can change people's lives when I'm teaching. And through the course of preparing to teach, which I think is what I try to do on stage, I try to entertain, because all speakers must be entertaining, but I'm also trying to teach. And if I do that really well, I'm learning through the process of preparing and then getting immediate feedback from the audience of, did what I share resonate with you and make a difference in your life and potentially change behavior? If so, then I'm learning. I'm learning a lot. And so I think this ahead, behind element of your who is really important.
I love that. And I imagine if you're giving a keynote speech, I mean, this is the slide people are also taking pictures of, because I think
it's a big one. It's a part of a lot of my talks, because it's universal. It works in every audience. It's true.
Everyone can reflect on it, right?
I've worked on it a lot myself. So I think those combination of stories and the application seem to go well. And so, yeah, I talk about that a lot.
Okay. I want to talk about this quote. It's on episode 1. So if anyone goes to that page on episode 1, might take you a little while to get there, so Google it. But the quote is from the great John Wooden. And the quote is, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future," man. I love that when I saw that. It was just got the chills.
I've put that on a lot of episodes, even because that's what this is all about. I mean, that's your who. I mean, that is what that is all about, is show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You become those people. So don't wander around and just hope to have good friends. Be intentional. Seek those people out. Build meaningful, mutually beneficial relationships. The same way, we might have said this last time, but the same way of like how to get a great wife, you have to deserve one. I think the same is true for friends. How to get great friends, you have to deserve them. So you got to be the type of person that others want to be friends with, right? And I think that's that. If you care about your who and you care about surrounding yourself with high character people, will deserve them. Be that type of person. I think we'll be better off for it.
Nah, that makes sense. Tell me about episode number 1. You mentioned Jason earlier. He was, he was literally your first guest. Did you know the guy? Did you? How did you get that rolling?
Send him a cold email, just like I did for the first probably 100, 200 guests. Mentioned I didn't have a show, but I shared kind of the vision of what I hoped it would be. And so those early guests all kind of took a shot. This is before they probably got absolutely smoked by podcast requests. So being early was helpful. I'd read this great Forbes article about him and what he was doing with Mastermind Talks. I'd wanted to go. And kind of told him all those things. And maybe he saw me as a potential future client, which I was and am. I've been to 3 of his events now. So I don't know. Maybe that's why he said yes. He didn't say that. I think he's just a kind, caring person, and that's why. So we've remained friends through all these years. But I thought he was an interesting guy. I wanted to learn more from him, and it worked out. And now it's episode 1. I think it's kind of choppy. It's kind of rough, but there are some nuggets there that are pretty good. So I'm still proud of it. Episode 1's important, by the way, for a podcast. A lot of people, once they subscribe, they may go all the way back to the first one, and so you want that one to be good.
That's amazing. Yeah, it goes back to the thing you said about Steve Jobs. Sometimes you just have to ask.
Yes, that's a great video, the Jobs video, which I know we've talked about, but you're going to struggle in this if you're afraid to ask, or if you're embarrassed to get rejected, or embarrassed to have people say no. I was a little bit hesitant to ask Pat to come on episode 500 because of his crazy life right now, 5 days a week. I mean, he's getting calls from the head of every network, Amazon, Apple, every TV network every day. He just got signed to do ESPN College Game Day. He's the main guy on WWE. He was at
I was going to say, just like wrestling as well.
He wrestled Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, he's one of the most in-demand humans on the planet right now. And so I hesitated initially, but then I thought, you know, like we built a relationship. I'm going to ask. I got to ask. If he can't do it, he can't do it. And he was just like, dude, this is 500. It's your family. I don't want to mess this up. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then he's like, if you truly, really want me to, I would love to. I'd be honored to. And he said that, and you'll hear on the episode. But I am a firm believer that you got to ask. You got to go for it. It is the difference between the people who dream about things and the people who actually do things is that they got to be willing to ask.
Dude, that picture that you put up, like a screenshot of the episode, I had to like double take. I thought it was like fake, you know?
Yeah, because they're
so
both
cool
in
to
their
see
studio.
it.
They're both
Yeah.
in their studios. So like, but they both recorded with their high quality mics, and
man.
they're both in studio. And yeah, it was what I didn't think. I thought he'd just like hold his phone in the side room or something, but no, he had his producers and everything, get them all dialed up. So I'm super appreciative that he wanted it to look and sound good.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. I've had people who don't do that, man. They're like, you know, I'll take I think I've told you this once, but like somebody took an interview, someone who interviews people for a living, took an interview driving to work, you know, on his cell phone, which I appreciate, but for someone to like do the opposite, that it, you know, it means a lot to them as well.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think like all this matters. I mean, there's a reason that we got this dialed up with the lighting and the camera and everything, because it matters. I want to show respect for my guests. I want to show respect for people when I go on their shows, and this is the only setup that I use. So I do Zooms and circles and interviews, and people seem surprised. Oh, wow, it's the same thing, man. I'm like, no, this is all I got. Like, it's by design. I do want them to feel special. I do want it to feel good. I want them to. I want to show them respect. If it's a random one-on-one, I think I told you last time, like sometimes I like to set up Zooms with people who send me thoughtful emails and say, let's talk. And then you pop on exactly as you are on your show. It shows them respect. And I think that's not really that hard to do. I try to do that. If I'm going to be in my car, I won't schedule the call. I will say, well, let's schedule it when I'm going to be back in my studio. And so I just think that's an easier way to do it. I get it. Like, corporate world people might be harder because their schedules are crazy and they're back to back and all this stuff. But for me, I try to show respect in all ways and show up for them, that so it looks and sounds and feels good.
That's cool. I wanted to ask you about one concept, and the concept is voluntary hardship. It's just one of those that I've learned throughout the show, and curious, you know, what is it and what does it mean to you?
Michael Easter wrote The Comfort Crisis, another great episode, by the way, Michael Easter. And in that book, and we talked about this on the episode, these researchers went to the airport, and they set up shop in an area where people could choose to go up an escalator or walk upstairs. And they measured how many people chose the escalator and how many people chose the stairs. Now, they threw out anybody who was in a wheelchair or on crutches or anything like that, right? Okay. And what percentage of people, May, do you think chose the stairs versus the escalator?
15%?
2%. And it's become so easy to get anything and everything today. If you want food, DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever. If you need a ride, Uber. Everything, there's something at your fingertips for everything you could possibly need. And so because of that, we've become wired to be lazy. I think intentionally choosing to do hard things better prepares you to deal with the inevitable adversity that will strike. So walking upstairs is so easy. Now, the escalator is easier, but it's not hard to walk upstairs. But I try to become the type of person that is better prepared for hard moments. I run sprints every Sunday morning right as the sun's rising, every Sunday, no matter what, no matter the weather. Now, why? Well, because it hurts. It's hard. And I don't know, maybe I'll be chased by a lion someday, and I want to be prepared, right? I'll probably be faster than the other guy who doesn't run sprints on Sunday. So like it's just a mental thing. And I think preparing your mind by regularly doing hard things or choosing the harder path by when you're on a walking trail, you don't cut the corner. You know, on Sundays you go run the sprints. When there's an escalator and there's stairs, you take the stairs. It's actually not that hard, but it is the harder path. And I think it's all about preparing yourself for the adversity that will strike, because it will strike all of us. And I want to be as prepared as possible. And I don't even think it's that hard to do, but most people don't do it. So to me, I also think that helps with like delayed gratification. James Clear and I talked a lot about this. For example, the book writing process is tough because you spend years of your life writing it and you have no idea if people are going to like it. If you need instant gratification, you just couldn't write books, because you get the opposite of that. And so I think it's also good to have those types of projects regularly going on. So it like challenging you mentally, because it forces you to delay the gratification. And those people who are able to delay gratification, who are able to wait, who choose to do the harder thing, I think give themselves a chance for things to go well, probably better than the ones who choose the lazier path.
I wanted to ask you about this. You mentioned kind of weathering the storm and building that resilience and taking the harder path. Um, what do you feel is like the hardest thing you've ever been through in your life?
Um, how personal do you want me to go, man?
As personal as you're open to getting, because I know you and I
Well,
talk a lot about
I think
yeah,
having a daughter out of wedlock is a thing that I've done, and she's right across the street at volleyball right now. We just had dinner, and I'm picking her up right after this. She's a freshman in high school now, so many years have passed since that moment when I found out like what was going on. I would say that is a huge challenge initially, because most people plan those things. And so when you don't, and you also live in a place where people are judging and talking, and that you shouldn't do certain things if you're not married and all of that, that can be tough, man. That can be hard to deal with. The cool thing about it, though, is the thing that starts as, oh, you're being judged and you're worried. It helped me and Ella's mom. I think it helped us both. I wouldn't say not care as much about all of that, but not really think about it as much, because that was the initial thing we thought about a lot. And you kind of have to get over that just by going through it so much. So I think, and now she's the greatest blessing of our lives. So I think it's not easy at the beginning, but that was hard initially, because you're thinking, oh my God, I used to make fun of people who did that, and now I'm one of those guys. But then you realize like it literally is the greatest thing that ever happened. Like it's led to everything that's been amazing in my life. So I think that's probably initially, before all of that, before like she's born and all that, I think that was tough. But obviously, as you know, as a dad, like there's just nothing better.
yeah.
Just the circumstances of which it came about initially were just a really judgy situation that I had to work through. And I was young; I was in my mid-20s, and so at that stage, you're not necessarily, at least I wasn't, in a stage where I was probably going to initially handle that well.
I appreciate you sharing that, man. I
Yeah.
didn't obviously don't know all your life details, but like, it sounds like just the work that you put in also yourself over the last decade. You mentioned like the few words that you mentioned about like being more reasonable and being more
Yep.
patient and like all those things. I mean, that's what it's about, right? And then you can become the best version of yourself. And again, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's real life. I mean, I know I'm not alone. I mean, it's funny. We're reading about Tom Brady right now and the stuff he's dealing with personally. Tom's situation and mine, it happened at the same time. Like our kids are the same age. That weird, it was his ex-girlfriend, similar situation,
Uh,
and so I was like, oh my gosh. So this is Tom Brady. So it happens to people, but again, I guarantee you, he's saying the same thing. Like it's the greatest thing that ever happened to him. And so,
right. Yeah.
I would say the exact same thing. It's even better than that. And to me, there's just nothing like it. As you know, there's it's so weird, isn't it, man? Like when you become a dad, I don't know. I mean, there just is nothing better in the world than like the love you could have for that person. Because I didn't think it was possible to like
Yeah.
have that much love, and then you do in some weird way. Like it just happens. Like how does this real? Like it's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the like we had a dog first, and he's behind me, and that was the first time I thought I never knew there was this kind of love in the
Yeah.
world and in life. Like I didn't know you could experience something like this. And kids is obviously like on another level.
Yep.
And I look at my 5-year-old son, and I'm like, anytime like maybe I want to get mad about something, they're usually really stupid. I'm thinking like he's like a replica of me at 5. Like, how can I get
Did
mad at that guy?
Let me ask you, between your first and second, did you think, I had this thought, there's no way I could love another baby like this one? It's not possible. There's not enough love in the world for this. And then all of a sudden that one's born. And somehow, deep in those reserves of your heart, like you feel it and you have it. It's like, where did this come from? I was nervous about that. I'm like, this is not, there's no way I'm going to be able to love this.
Yeah.
And then you do. It's bizarre how it works, man.
I think we were always like hoping for 2. And I don't know if it's your heart sort of having to split up the love, or your heart just expands, right?
Yeah.
To
I think
love
that's
them
probably a
both
good point.
equally.
It probably, yeah. Yeah. It's wild,
funny.
man. I didn't know we were going to go off on this tangent, but it's because, as you know, fatherhood and this stuff is just,
To me, it's the hardest thing.
Yep.
Like work is easy compared to, I'll say my day job is easy compared to being a dad and having that like level of patience with just 2, like,
I mean, it just is. It just is. It's just a different level of, because you care so much, and then things. It's life. Everyone. That's the. I just interviewed Cody Keenan, and it was hilarious because his wife was gone, and they had a babysitter, and the babysitter could not corral his 2-year-old daughter. She kept coming into his home office, and it's the most humanizing element of people is to watch them. Like, he's like, man, I'm sorry, this is messed up the recording. I'm like, I completely understand, man. I get it. But it just humanizes everyone, no matter who they are, how much power or whatever. Everyone's had the moment where their 2-year-old just won't leave them alone in their office to do a Zoom.
yeah. I mean, so I have like French doors here. I got my son, my daughter, these like, it's like a horse head on a broomstick.
Yeah.
Worst purchase of all time. Right? Because they're always gonna like bang the dog with it, or like just hit stuff with it. And then he uses it to unlock the latch. So he'll just, because he's short, but he'll use it to unlock the latch. I can't tell you how many meetings he's like broken into the office with. But yeah, man, it's
better now. That's the one. I mean, there's some good that came out of COVID. One of them is that people now are so.
It's like the great equalizer.
They're used to watching and seeing kids interrupt Zooms, and in a way, it becomes it adds some levity to the moments when you see people's kids, and they're like, "Oh no," Like I love it when that happens.
I remember I was leaving Steph Curry's house after interviewing Aisha, and then like it was like right when I was leaving, somebody in the back, like kids never came out. Somebody in the back yelled like, "Oh, I think your dog pooped in the house." I was like, "Oh my God."
Exactly. It's the great equalizer, man.
Yeah. I was like, "I'll go so you can handle this."
Yeah.
Okay. Couple of quick rapid fire questions if you've got time.
Okay.
Are you good, or do you have to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna go over to volleyball in like 10 minutes. Is that cool?
Okay. Yeah. It shouldn't take that long.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Because I'm about being a good dad, so I don't want you to be like late to pick her
Well,
up.
technically, the parents aren't supposed to watch tonight, but whatever. I'll go hang out a little bit. So anyway.
All right. Who is the hardest person to prepare for or interview that you've had on?
Oh, hardest. Man, that's tough.
Mine. I got like writer's block. Like I didn't think of a question to ask somebody. and I reached out to you and said, what do you think? And you said, hey, like, what would you want to learn from that person? Right. Um, and so I'm thinking, like, who is the toughest person to prepare for?
I don't know if I have a good answer for that one. I think I probably one of the ones that I did in front of a live audience, because you don't have, you can't edit for the audience. So you so bad, the fact that we can edit these and that we can cut parts makes it, I'm not as concerned. I still want it to be great for the guest. So I did one with James Clear. I did one with Jenny Britton Bauer, Kat Cole. I went and flew to see Brian Koppelman in New York. There wasn't an audience for that one though. So I don't know, man. I think that's hard. I don't, because like the one thing I've learned over the years is I'm not really intimidated by anybody, because I've experienced so much of the fact that people are people, and they have.
Were you
issues
nervous
with,
at all with Kat in person, audience?
I don't know
Any
if nervous
nervousness?
is the right. I think the right description is similar to a football game, and that is you have the anticipatory edge to you that you just want to get started. I always wanted to get the ball first when we played, because I wanted to get hit. I wanted to play. I wanted to get on the field as fast as possible. When I was a captain of my teams and I won the toss, there would be moments when I would say, we're taking the ball, even though our coaches wanted to defer. Especially in high school, as I kind of really took ownership of the team, I was like, we want the ball. And it was primarily because I just wanted to get the game started. And I didn't want to watch. I wanted to play. And so I think I have the same feelings before keynote speeches. I just want to get in. I want to get to the opener. I want to get to it, because once I get rolling, I seem to always have these moments during speeches where it's like I'm rolling, like I'm going. Yeah. I got it. I know where I'm going. My timing's good. The jokes are hitting, like all of that. I think it's similar. The live shows are like, let's get it going. And once we do, then I feel pretty good.
Okay. Who's on your bucket list that you haven't interviewed yet?
Doris Kearns Goodwin, Leadership in Turbulent Times, is a book. Rivals is also one she's written. She's a presidential historian. I've emailed her 100 times. I've called her phone number on her website. I've left voicemails. I've talked to people who know her. I have not locked it in. I think I will. I've not got any response, by the way, so there's no guarantee. But I feel like that she will. I think it'd be cool to talk to The Rock. I'd really like to have The Rock on. That one's probably
maybe John Cena first. I saw that.
Yeah, I saw he followed me. I don't know if he follows a lot of people, probably, but I don't.
Were you a big Rock fan growing up?
The Rock?
Yeah, like wrestling and all that stuff.
Not really. Not from wrestling. Just from his kind of how he's built up his like ethos and his brand, and he seems. I said this to AJ. He seems like there's no way that he could be relatable, but he is in a weird way. Like, how is The Rock relatable? He's jacked, he's huge, but then you hear him talk, like, oh yeah, he's kind of a guy. Like, I could talk to him. So I think that'd be good. Dave Matthews, I'm going to go see him on Wednesday. I would love to interview him, but I'm just going to see him play music. He's on that list. Yeah, those are probably the initial. I think it'd be cool, and this would be more because of my age of my daughters, is I would love to interview Taylor Swift, mainly to be the coolest person in the world for like an hour for them, and then they'd go back to making fun of me. But that'd be kind of cool to talk to her. And I think she's an amazing performer. She's a songwriter. She's a creative. I think there's a lot probably we could learn from a long conversation with her.
Okay, who was surprisingly amazing as a guest?
I can't say that. What do you mean? I can't say that.
So somebody kind of coming in, you just, not that they would be bad, but you're like, wow, like I did not know that, they were going to be this good.
So I've had a few politicians on recently, which initially I wouldn't do. I had the governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. He's the highest rated governor. in the United States before he had to stop. He's too reasonable, so he had to leave politics, which all the reasonable. Although we'll see how it's going to be in the future, but he was too reasonable, so he left. I had the mayor of New York City.
Yeah, what's up with the political? Like, was that intentional? Like, you follow these guys, or
So
'cause I
I saw
noticed?
Governor Baker. His team reached out because he had a book. Um, Actually, same thing with Mayor Eric Adams, but not a book, but a somebody who works with him has been a longtime listener.
Oh, interesting.
So that guy has been emailing me. His name is Jimmy. Jimmy had been emailing me for 4 or 5 years. This is why I try. I mean, some things you don't know how they're going to pay off, but like if somebody emails me, I try to be responsive. I try to respond and try to be helpful. Jimmy and I have been emailing for probably 4 years. And then one day he emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm now work with Mayor Eric Adams." And I was like, "I just saw that guy on Bill Maher's TV show. That'd be great. I'd love to talk to him." And he made it happen. So I didn't know that. I didn't know what affiliation he had with anybody when we first started talking 4 years ago. But sometimes like stuff like that works itself out. So
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of more drawn to the moderate, reasonable people in politics. There are a few others that that are in the works that I want to talk to. And so when I get that chance, I think it's neat. It's a new world. I mean, I really value diversity of thought. I really value people that do things that I've never done and will never do. I'd never be in that world. And so I think it's interesting to be a public servant in that regard, especially when the landscape seems bizarre as it is today. So, yeah, I'm open to that. I did initially with the podcast say I would never do that. And I think, again, that's another evolution of me is now I can't think of anybody I would ever say, no, I would never do that. I just try to speak in less absolutes and be more reasonable and open-minded to things. And now some of these politicians who want to talk, I'm game for it.
That's cool. It's interesting how it's sort of come to you full circle.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What is a piece of feedback or impact that your work has had on somebody that's meant a lot to you? You think of that sort of one story that you will share with your grandchildren that you're really proud of. What comes to mind?
I shared the story with Mike and his daughters and son when it comes to dying with zero. The emails that I like the best that really kind of make me that I would call the juice, as I say to them when I respond, is when they say something like a farmer and his wife spend their dinner conversations talking about the show. Because they both listen individually and then they come together at dinner, and that's the topic of conversation with their kids and as they're eating. And that's not my world. I don't know anything about farming. I don't know anything about any of that stuff. And so when you hear stories like that, or someone that the head coach of Texas A&M's basketball team sent me this really nice long email a couple weeks ago and said, I'm the number one. I'm like you're the number one fan that you have. And I was like, what? I mean, and he's like, I'm spreading your message everywhere. I'm like, oh, maybe you are why I get these notes from so many basketball coaches. But so like stuff like that is just neat. I think when people who are accomplishing big things are learning from the stuff you put out, I mean, that's super gratifying. So some people say like I can just do this for myself, and if I feel good, that's good. I just that's not me. Like I love hearing from people that it's impacted their lives, especially those who are doing big things, or at least it's making a difference with their families. Like that's even more. So to me, I do feed off some of the juice that comes from impacting people. So it's like the little stories like that are the ones that are really meaningful to me.
That's amazing, man. Well, hey, congratulations again. And I'm so thankful just to kind of get to know you over the years. I mean, I sent you, talk about cold emails. I sent you a cold email about 7 or 8 years ago.
What year was that? I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah, I have the email. I was looked at it a while back. You might have been like in the 50s or 60s of your episodes.
That's so cool, dude.
Yeah, it's been a while, and I really appreciate also just the level of thought you put into these responses, because I think 500 is a heck of a milestone. I know it's not like a new book you put out, but I do think it's so important, and like it's a thing people can get inspired from, to see. So I
Well,
appreciate it.
it's obvious how much work you put in this, man, and how much thought you put into not only this but kind of all the things that you do. And I've really enjoyed our conversations over the years. I'm glad we're going to keep having them, whether, like I said, whether we're recording or not. I feel like last time we had a long form conversation, I was in the parking lot in between games at one of Ella's volleyball tournaments, and so I remember that it was like, this is a really good talk. In between, you had a lot of I think career options that you were thinking about, and it's just neat to be able to kind of see how this goes and how you evolve and how I do too, and we kind of talk along the way, dude. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your early support. And then also the fact that you just you're consistent with your own career, with your own family stuff, as well as with your support of me. So I really appreciate it, man.
Oh man, likewise. It's important stuff. If I think about, the podcast that I probably listened to the most over the last 5, 7, 8 years, there's a rotation, but yours is absolutely on top of that list. And so I do think, I try to share it. And when certain people go through certain things, I'll say, hey, check this episode out, and those episodes will come to mind. And I do think there's different personas that listen for different reasons. But I think that's what makes the show so great. So man, keep doing what you're doing.
Well, that's why this stuff works, man, though, is because people trust you that are in your circle, and when you give a genuine referral with no strings attached, no monetary value, you're doing it just to be helpful for that person. That's how this thing grows, man. There's no more powerful form of marketing than a genuine referral. Check this thing out. I think it'll help you. I think you might like this one. And that's really why we're doing this today. I mean, because of recommendations like that, man.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. Again, appreciate it. Go across the street. I know you're running.
Thanks, dude.
So I appreciate the time.
No, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Talk soon.
Dude, thank you so much, man. Hey, let me know if you need anything at all, seriously, with any of this stuff. I appreciate the prep. It's just next level. I know I know that doesn't happen quickly. Like, I know it takes time, and I do sincerely appreciate it, man.